Hey, everybody. Welcome to Moto Talk with Steve and Kim. I'm
Killer.
Steve. That's Kim. And that's Killer. He's chilling. He's probably shredded a couple rabbits today. And he's just wiped out. And he's just going to chill out. And he's going to talk about Mid-Ohio Vintage Days with us. But before we get into that, let's see. I want to send a shout out. Let me get the comments going.
Keith Carlson off of there.
What am I doing? Oh, guess Keith Carlson. What's he doing on there?
Yeah.
He is always in my way. I don't know if I can switch that or not. I'm going to do it anyway.
Guest killer.
Hold on a second. Sorry about the delay there. I don't even know if you guys can still hear me when I do that. Anyway, okay, Mid-Ohio Vintage Days, but big shout out. Hey, Aaron, how you doing? Killer says hi. He's definitely chilling, having a good time. Shout out to Pickle at Steel Customs here in Indianapolis. So if you have a Harley or an Indian and you need some engine work or anything done to it for that matter, check out Steel Customs. I've done shout outs to him before, along with LA Cycle and BMF Twins. Those are the three main shops that I suggest you take a Harley to and really get some great work done on them.
Yeah, so we take in anything. Sometimes we see something that maybe isn't in our wheelhouse. Mm-hmm. And in this case, a guy had just recently bought a fairly late model Harley, very well built trike, a very expensive one actually. And his big twin needed the oil change and he wanted a safety check, but it also had an unbelievable noise. And I thought I knew what the noise was, but we called in an expert and called in Bear from BMF Twins, and Bear came in and said, yeah, I think it's this. And I really didn't know this was a common thing, but Bear says it does happen. It's a situation where the cam drive, the cam shafts that sit in the cases actually start losing the insert for the bearing on the inside part of the camshaft. And when it does that, the cam's got a gear on it, and it tilts the gear on the cam drive, and then it's got too much engagement. And it sounds like a top fuel car belt drive on a blower. I mean, it's really loud. And in this case, Bear said, yeah, don't ride it.
Don't ride it.
Grenade.
And I wanted to be safer than sorrier.
Yeah.
And so I called Pickle and asked him if we trailered it over there, if he could listen to it as well, get a second opinion. I didn't want someone to ride something home that I thought was a little sketchy.
Yeah, this one was like really sketchy.
And the customer was appreciative. And I also wanted to make sure it wasn't something that, maybe something dumb that, we did.
Yeah, it wasn't, because you can't get in there inside the cases in the timing chest.
Yeah.
Just changing oil.
I told him, I said, I'm not too proud if I take it over to Pickle and he finds something weird that we did, maybe we put a cover on wrong or right. Something,
no, we didn't.
No problem, man. No, we didn't.
No.
But, hey, Roger. Hey, Ron. Mahoy.
Long time no see.
Roger, we have parts for you. As you know, I sent you a message earlier today. And Killer's just sitting over here looking at me. I don't know why. I guess he's camera shy. He just likes to be out of the camera. Anyway, hey, we're going to talk about Mid-Ohio Vintage Days. If you have not been there, one of the main things about Mid-Ohio Vintage Days is they have probably the largest vintage motorcycle swap meet in America. We were talking about that earlier. I know, Barber has one, but and I don't really know of any others personally across the U.S. So I can't really say for sure that's the case.
Yeah, there's a big one in Iowa, but it's mostly ACA kind of stuff. The ancient motorcycle deal, where you see a lot of the very early Harleys and very early American bikes. That's a huge one, and there's another one it's in Del Mar in California. That's very much like Vintage Days or Barber, and it's huge.
Okay.
But Mid-Ohio, I think, is arguably the biggest one. We talked about that a little bit. Barber's pretty big, but it looks very well organized, Barber, because there are places around the Barber facility where you see different kinds of vendor type things. They have new vendors in one place. They have parts vendors in one place. They have the normal guys, I'll say normal guys, that have their own booth kind of in their own area. But when you go to Mid-Ohio, it's everybody on top of everybody else. It's absolutely crazy, but it's also super rich in opportunity. If you go there and you see if you're looking for something specific and it's vintage Japanese, it could be American, it could be British, it could be Italian, you'll find it there. And you can be rest assured that chances are, if it's a whole motorcycle and it came in on a trailer,
someone wants
most of the guys that are in there already are buying those bikes right off the trailer before they ever hit the ground.
The vendor day, which is like a Wednesday or Thursday,
before the event's
there's
open.
no public, and the vendors are all going around buying each other stuff, and then you'll see it for sale again
or not. A lot of those guys buy up whatever they want and take them home.
Add more money on that. Now I know if Roger chimes in again, he's probably raced there a few times. Did you ever have a chance to race there?
I did in a supermoto class on the track, and then I took a Keith Code school.
A class, schooling.
And that's a super cool track for 10 reasons, and it's a great spectator track. It's not unlike Barber, where there are a lot of hills and places where you can just ride around the track and stop and look. You don't necessarily have to sit in a grandstand, although there are stands to sit in all the way around the track. And you can see it from the inside or the outside because of the way the thing's laid out. Barber, for the most part, you got to see it from the outside.
I have a couple questions for you about the track itself. I want to answer a couple things, a couple questions from Mike Davis. So best place to park, there's only a couple entrances. There's 3 entrances, but they don't always have them open at the same time. They will guide you to parking. It is best if you have a pit bike. Pit bikes are all over the place. That's the way to travel around the facility, because you've got, and I'll list some of these out, and you can help me list these. You've got vintage dirt bike racing, you have vintage street road racing, all sorts of classes, 305s, twin 350s, 450s, probably have some inline 4s. You also have trials. Competition.
They have both competition and demos, so that you can see professionals.
And there's some hair scramble that I've never been able to see actually yet, and I'd like to.
And they have a motocross track that's over by the and not too far. It's on the grounds, the same place that
pretty much at the
road
corner,
race track is.
Right at the corner of one of the entrances.
And then they also have flat track races that are down the street. They're you might get in the car and have to drive half an hour. But it's worth it to do that.
Roger says he's raced there since the early 80s. So, and Roger still has, I think, 2 or 3 of his race bikes from back in the day. We'll probably talk about this again because Mid-Ohio this year is in July of all months. And
it's a month from tomorrow.
It's basically a month from tomorrow. So it'll be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's for the public. I think it's either Thursday through Sunday or Friday through Sunday.
I think it's Friday through Sunday.
That. We'll bring that up again. And then Roger, if you have some photos from back in the day, just Facebook those to me and I can show them maybe on a little bit on the show next week. We might have Skylar. Skylar's supposed to be on the show tonight. He's out of town. I guess.
His grandfather passed, and he had just come back from Epping, New Hampshire, for the NHRA event there. And on the way back, he had to go to a service for his grandfather, and he's doing that today. So we'll see him next week.
So a little shout out to him. Our sympathies. Anyway, so some of the other festivities is, of course, you got food vendors. You have demo rides. That's the word I was trying to come up with. All the big dealers bringing their bikes out. They have scheduled demo rides you can sign up for, ride some of the new bikes. I don't know where they go. I don't know if they go around the track. Or
they don't go around the track. They actually take you out into the hills of Mid-Ohio. And it's absolutely fabulous out there. One thing this year. One thing that you get to do when you're there, if you take a demo ride, is you get to see what riding is like in that area. And they take you out because they're very familiar with where they're going, and it's great rolling hills. It reminds me a lot of Nashville. If you're riding down near Bloomington,
Okay.
You know, on 44 or 144 or any of those roads that are down South Indiana. But they take you, it's not a short ride. The demo rides are 15 miles, you know, so you get a good feel for whatever it is you're riding.
Good feel for the bike.
Yeah. And they have a lead rider and a follow rider to make sure everybody makes it along the way, but they do not hold back. You can run it just as hard as you want.
Right.
And you know, you want to treat that with some respect, but it's still something that you don't have to baby it around.
Yeah. So, if you do walk it, Mike Davis, you're going to get a lot of walking in. Having a pit bike is really just a great deal. Sometimes you can just go there and buy a little pit bike and then sell it at the end of the.
That's real common, actually. That's very common.
You buy a $500 pit bike and you sell it for $600 at the end of the day. You never know.
And one thing about Mid-Ohio, if you've been there a bunch of times, and I know we've had people in our general friends group do it differently. They got a hotel room close by, or I say close by, it's still half an hour from the track. Away. And if you haven't done that already, my guess is you won't be able to get one now. You probably have a very difficult time getting a place to stay for 10 reasons. But the best way to go is to camp there. And I know virtually everybody that's ever been there can tell you that it's one of two things or both at the same time. It's either hot as the core of the sun or it's raining like crazy.
It's a mud fest.
And either way, it's survivable. It's still fun to do, even if it's crappy weather, unless there's a tornado or something. And there has been a couple of times when I've been there, the weather's been really bad, but it's high ground where they park campers. So you don't usually get stuck in the mud there. The place where the swap meet's held is pretty muddy. But one really great thing about Mid-Ohio is their facility is so good that they have a big concrete block building that has common availability showers and restroom facilities. So it's really common in any given day, even if the mud's up to your neck, to see a guy on a pit bike wearing just his shorts and flip-flops and carrying a towel over his shoulder and riding from wherever he's staying over to the showers. And the shower area is on concrete pad. You can get off the dirt. You can get in there and get clean. If you're shy, it might not be for you, but you can still go there, and it's very well maintained. And there's soap there. There's other facilities, so you can get clean every single day and go back and sleep in some comfort as long as you have cover. But even if you were in a tent, it would be doable as long as you were out of the rain.
Yep. So I'm going to move to the road racing. And speaking of the showers, I went to Peter Cravon. I went to his page because I knew he raced vintage motorcycles for quite a while.
That's a Redline guy, right?
Redline Power Sports up in Fort Wayne. Peter is one of the owners, and it's number 988, if I remember right. He's on the left side of this picture in the red Honda, and that's either a 350 or a 450. And he's always pretty much been in the top five, no matter where he goes. And there may be in his whole group, there might be 20, 25 riders, depending. Anyway, that's a picture. But anyway, he had a picture on his webpage, Facebook page, of him coming from the showers back to his camper, and all he was wearing was his towel.
Yeah, there you go.
So that you see a lot of that.
Again, if you're shy, it might not be for you.
If you're shy.
Well, the other thing is there's two different areas to camp.
Yes.
And they're on one side of the track for one group, and they're on the other side of the track for another group. And I'll just tell you,
looks like fun.
It does. It is fun. There is a group of people that stays closer to the swap meet, and it's, I would say, the more PG rated campground.
Okay.
People expect to actually sleep there, and maybe protect their stuff and do whatever. Roger says the flat track is at Ashland, which is like half an hour away, and definitely worth going to.
Hey, Andrew, what's up, David? Andrew's been there many years.
There you go.
He's down the road from us.
If you're a survivor of Mid-Ohio, you also know that on the other side of the track, there's a 24/7 group of people that are there trying the rev limiter on their sport bike all night long. And they're also marching around in the campgrounds with not even a towel.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of drinking and
banjo
drinking.
playing,
it's
harmonicas.
Absolutely out of control. So if you want that sort of thing, all you have to do is walk across the track to the other side.
That's right.
And you'll see it.
One other thing in the middle of the campground, and I'll throw a picture up of this, and then I'll have to go to one of our other subjects, and that is, here is the campground Kim's talking about, where all the shenanigans goes.
Yep.
On the right side, on the left side of this picture, is the campground goes all the way to the trees, and then there's just hundreds of spots. This is a little dirt track right in the middle of the campground, and it's basically a free-for-all. You get out there on whatever you're riding. I took the Pook out there. I'll show you a picture here in a minute. And the first time I went with Keith and I think one of his brothers and Daniel Diddy, and just had a great time. Someone's asking about the show, Tyson. I guess I'm gonna have to send him a link there. So that's the flat track of it's just major chaos. And then our good buddy from Tasmania, this is Malcolm. How do you spell it? Innes. Yeah. Malcolm comes to the States and buys bikes and takes them back to Tasmania.
And a sombrero over there.
And so this was, I think, his first time to Mid-Ohio, and he had met us in Indiana somehow. He was coming through, and he bought one of my CB750s.
Is that your 225?
I think that is. I think that's my old one. Anyway, so let me show the other picture here of the shenanigans. So on this picture, you've got Keith Carlson on his RV90 two-stroke. You've got Malcolm, and then I'm on the 250 Twingle in the back there, and we're just going around on this dirt track.
Everybody wearing shorts and tennis shoes.
It's
no helmets.
Unbelievable. Yeah, it was a great time. Here's another picture of my Urban Express. That was one of our pit bikes. The Pook was one of the pit bikes.
So that Urban Express is an example of a bike you take there to use as a pit bike, and you leave it there because somebody bought it.
Yeah. What's funny is I sold it the first day, but I told the guy I needed to use it all weekend.
Yeah.
So Sunday he comes back and buys it and takes it. So that was pretty cool. It was
a good plan.
And sometimes you run into people So this is our spot right here at top of row U. And well, it looks like I'm not really standing there. Okay, I'm sitting on a bike. That's all I can say. And so our buddy Rick Smits, he'll get out there to the swap meet every once in a while. He comes by the shop too and uses some things.
Great guy.
Our sandblaster and such. Really good guy, and he's a really good restorer. He restores his own bikes,
and he does a beautiful job. He's
does a lot of nice work on them.
He loves Eastern European dirt bikes and street bikes. He's got a bunch of them.
Makos, Jawas, all that.
But that doesn't limit him to keeping just those.
Yeah, ran into Rick Smits.
There's something else you can see in that picture.
Oh, let's go back to that.
So when I said it's either hot as hell or raining like crazy, you can see those flags are standing out pretty good.
This was a rain weekend.
Yeah, and it was getting ready to bust loose there if it didn't already. That was probably at noon or something right there.
Oops, I got to take that off there. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, anyway, so let's throw a couple more pictures up there. This is part of our booth. So I took the 750. You took your Galera and the Yamaha, and what's in the back there? That's my
Super 90s pit bike that I took there, and I could have sold 15 times if I wanted to.
Oh gosh, yeah. That
I intended to bring that home. So that's probably a good place to branch off. Things happen to you there that you don't expect, and it's almost always the queen of the show when Steve brings that particular bike. If you go back to that picture again, when he brings the CB750 that's in the middle of that photograph.
Let me put that back up there.
Yeah, that one.
I'm getting distracted by messages.
So that's the same bike that Steve took to Meekum. Again, unrestored, beautiful piece, very difficult to duplicate. And that event was the one that they celebrated the 50th anniversary of the CB750. So there were a number of beautiful restored CB750s, but to my way of thinking, none of them were any better than that one. So we had a lot of people come through the booth, and as you might imagine, many of them say, yeah, I have a CB750, and there's so many different flavors that you kind of have to listen to them carefully to make sure you know what they have. And they're more than willing to talk about it. But we had a guy come through the booth, and it had been muddy as all get out, and he's wearing, I don't even think he had shoes on, and he was wearing cutoff jeans and a wife beater, and he was muddy and dirty and sweaty. And he came in and he said, yeah, I got one just like that. And of course, by that time we'd had 100 people through there saying they had a CB750.
That's right.
And I said, well, is it just like that or is it sort of like that? And he said, no, it's just like that. He goes, it's a failed project. I've had it for about 10 years. I never put it back together, but I took it apart. And he said, I've got it. I said, what are you going to do with it? And this was probably about noon, 11ish or noon. And then he said, I don't know. I said, would you sell it? He goes, yeah. And I said, what year is it? He said, it's a 70. And I thought, if he's real, but you don't really give those guys a lot of credibility at first because you see a lot of people.
Did you tell him he lived close by?
He told me he lived close by.
Yeah.
And he
took
said,
a little road trip.
So he said, well, I'll come back. And like I said, I didn't expect to see that guy again.
Yeah.
And at 5:30 or so, he came back muddier and dirtier.
Yeah.
And said, yeah, I'm getting ready to head home. If you guys want to come over to the farm and take a look at it. And Steve and I got in the truck.
We unhooked the trailer and headed on over there.
And he was about 18 miles out. It was a pretty good hike, but still we got to his farm and he had several projects going on in his barn. And one of them was a 1970 CB750 that was in about 10 boxes.
Yep.
And it was scattered around in various states of disassembly. And so I looked around. I was pretty picky, trying to figure out, is this one whole motorcycle? And it was a whole motorcycle. And I wound up getting it at a great price. It had some stuff that he'd collected over time that were real OEM parts to do the bike. And it took me about a year, but the result is this motorcycle you see behind me. And the only
1970 CB750.
Yeah, the only deviation on this bike that I made from the way it came from the factory was the gold stripe. On the tank. They made them gold, and they had black stripes on the tank. They never sent gold stripe ones to the U.S., but they did sell them in Europe. So I was duplicating what amounts to a prototype bike that they had the Brighton show in England. Yeah. Back in the day. And when I painted this one, I wanted the gold stripe. So I was very happy to find that, but that's an example of what you find when you go there.
And I will have to say on here, a little shout out to Tyson Fritz. He sent me a picture of one of his race bikes. And now he has not ridden at Mid-Ohio yet, but he's been racing for the last couple years. And
it's not new to him.
It's not new to him. This is one of his bikes. So shout out to him. I was just texting him on the phone because I asked him to send me a picture of him racing at Mid-Ohio, and he said he didn't have one, but here's a picture of his bike.
That's a CB7 or a CB175.
Yeah, and then I said, well, I'm going to use it on the show, and he goes, show ? So I took a picture of the show while we're here and sent it to him. So maybe he'll start tuning in. And I forgot to put some links on Indiana Motorcycle Riders and the Indianapolis Vintage page. But
so while we have
it'll be recorded. So
while we have Roger, you said you had some questions about the track.
Let's see. Well, tell everybody what the track is. I mean, Mid-Ohio is the track, so it's not just vintage stuff.
No,
right?
It's in Lexington, Ohio, and they run Indy cars there. They run Trans Am cars there. They run AMA professional races there. The actual track is as world class as it can be. The facility has indoor air conditioned pits. It has every amenity you can imagine if you're running a professional event. But they let amateurs ride on it. And it's the same exact track that everybody else rides on. It's got some really cool characteristics, not the least of which I mentioned before. You can see all around the track. There's really not a place you can't see. There's a couple of
not a ton of elevation.
Well, there's some elevation change. Yeah, when you're riding on it, it seems like there's a lot. I guess
I'm comparing it to Barber. It's not quite as much elevation as Barber.
I'd say it's pretty close.
You think so?
Yeah, I do. I mean, Barber is
look at it a little
big
closer
rolling
then,
hills
maybe.
and all, but there's some areas in the back section of Mid-Ohio that go up and down and around. If you think about where we were watching that 350 race, that you can see them coming down from the lower area. And
that's true. And then
they're
coming back up and then going down straight away.
There's a couple things about the Mid-Ohio track when you're actually riding on it that are really interesting. One of them is a place called the Keyhole, which is at the top of the track that's closest to the entrance of the facility. And it's got a really tight, banked corner that goes back onto a back straightaway that bears to the right. So it's a 3/4 mile long straightaway where bikes can really make a lot of speed. And then one of the other things, there's two other things that are memorable to me. One of them is in the back of the track. I want to say it's turn 12, but I don't know for sure off the top of my head, but it's an off camber. And it really gets your attention because you think you're flying and then you get into this off camber and it just wants to take you off the track. I mean, you can't lean anymore because the bike's getting into the pavement, and you have to prepare for it. Otherwise, you'll run right off the track. And the other thing that's cool about Mid-Ohio is there's a long straightaway across the pit straight that goes under a thing. It's a Honda walk bridge. That you go under, and you'll see it when you're there watching the races. It's right after the grid area. And the thing that you realize when you go under that bridge is you're gonna have to make a turn and you can't see it. Right. So you're going wide open on the first lap, not the start necessarily,
right?
But on the first lap, you might be running 80 miles an hour, and you're going into an area where you can't see the turn. And it's a real common place for people to toss into the weeds.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I don't know if Roger would agree with that, but those were my 3 memorable parts about Mid-Ohio.
Another thing that you can do is you can go into the garages and check out all the race bikes, and it's like a whole big family in there. I mean, everybody knows each other. They've all raced against each other. They help each other out. It's a pretty good time, and you're able to check that out.
One thing we didn't talk about is every year that I've been there, they've had a featured motorcycle.
Oh yeah.
And I've been there when it was MV. I've been there when it was Yamaha. I've been there when it was Ducati. I've been there when it was Husqvarna, and you get to see things when they have a particular kind of bike for the show bikes that you wouldn't see anywhere else, really. And they usually have somebody who's at the pinnacle of the sport historically. When it was Husqvarna, they had Malcolm Smith there, but they also had people running the vintage motocross like Pierre Carsmakers and some of the other guys that were pro riders back in the day. Including Charlie Williams. Charlie probably remember all that.
That's probably Charlie right there,
That's
leading
probably
the
Charlie
whole pack,
right there on that Mako.
Charlie Williams. No, there's a little bit of the motocross look right there.
Yeah, and these guys are no joke. I mean, you'll see lots of different people.
These guys have been racing for a long time, a lot of them. Another thing we have is some trials demo, and that's a pretty cool shot of him coming off the top of his trailer there. What else haven't I showed today?
When I went to the event and MV was the featured mark, they had John Surtees there, and you could walk right up to John Surtees and talk to him, get an autograph, whatever. It's really a great environment, and everybody's very friendly. There's not really any badness that I can think of that's ever happened when I've been there.
Roger says the front straight is the only level area. The rest is hills.
Yeah, that's my memory of it too. I mean, the front straight, I don't know.
I'm
level.
From Colorado. I guess I'm comparing hills to mountains. But anyway, another thing that goes on there is the VJMC usually has a spot in the middle of the track showing off all the vintage, all the really nice restored vintage motorcycles. So VJMC is Vintage Japanese Motorcycle Club, and it's a rather large club. I think there's different chapters in different states. And
there are, but we've got a couple of dignitaries here, and Barry Schonberger and Ellis Holman.
Yep, that's right.
I think both of them have served executive capacities with the VJMC, and they do definitely. Absolutely first-class work.
Yep. So what else goes on there? We've pretty much covered everything, and this is an every year event except for last year, of course. And it's rain or shine, mud or dust. And, we, for the last, I think, is it 2 years, 3 years?
3 years.
3 years, we've had our own booth. So our good buddy, Jimmy Connors from down in Bloomington, has
one
had
of a kind.
He is a one of a kind guy. He's a really good guy. I've had the pleasure of knowing him for a while, and he's got quite a collection of just all kinds of stuff, actually. But Jimmy and his buddies have had 4 spots at the flea market or the swap meet there for, I think, over 30 years. And one of the corner spots came available, and he was they were kind enough to allow me to basically just come in and use that spot. And of course, I pay him a little bit of the rent there. And so we are at the top of row U. If you can ever go there and figure out what that is, we will probably have, I don't know if I'll have time to get a custom tent this year, but usually it's just an orange top tent, and we're selling some CB750 parts, and we might be selling a couple bikes.
Yeah, I'll have some bikes there for sale. You will too.
Usually we'll be wearing our shirts and just kind of representing Hoy Vintage Cycles, but we want to go there and really enjoy some of the festivities this year. So we'll sell a few things, but we'll have a spot there that people can stop and say hey and maybe get a water or
I would say if you're going to go, plan to go for more than a day, because it's a hike. It's 5 hours to get there. And it's not that you can't do it in a day. I've done it in one day and it was okay. But I would recommend you plan to go for more than one day and you stay on the facility grounds. You don't have any real reason to leave. Yeah, exactly. It's pretty good. All right. Well, I think that sums it up. We just wanted to give you a little idea of what we got going on over there. Thanks, Aaron. Yeah, thanks, Aaron. Vintage Motorcycle Days. Hey, we've got a happy birthday for Kim tomorrow. If you want to remember that, send him a little note. Oh, what's our tip of the day? What's our tip of the day is if you have a lawnmower, a motorcycle, weed whacker, it doesn't make any difference. You need one of these. Anything with the spark plug. A spark plug. This is actually a little tool that plugs into your air compressor, and it has aggregate in this little bag. And you shove the spark plug in this little hole right here, and it stays in there by itself. Hit the little button. You hit the button, and hit this button right here, and it cleans your spark plug for you. You put it right back in. Something you can't live without. All right. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week, everybody. Take care. Be safe out there.